the music stopped. The audience fell silent, and Ellen DeGeneres, America's queen of laughter and light, stood frozen in the middle of her stage, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. For the first time in 19 years of hosting, she couldn't find the words. She couldn't crack a joke. She couldn't dance away the heaviness. All she could do was watch as an elderly man held his wife in his arms, swaying gently to a song that she would forget in less than an hour. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Because love, real love, doesn't need memory to exist. This is the story of Richard and Dorothy Miller, and this is the day Ellen learned that some moments are too sacred for entertainment. 3 weeks earlier, Ellen's production team received an email that would change everything. It wasn't from a celebrity publicist or a major network. It was from a 34-year-old woman named Jennifer, and the subject line read, "My parents need one more dance." Ellen gets thousands of emails every week, requests for help, stories of hardship, pleas for attention. Most never make it past the interns. But something about Jennifer's words made producer Mike Stevens pause. He opened the email and read, "Dear Ellen, my name is Jennifer Miller. My father is 71 years old, and my mother is 68. They've been married for 47 years. Last year, my mom was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. She's declining fast. Some days she doesn't remember my name. Most days she doesn't remember her own address. But every single day, without fail, my father puts on their wedding song and asks her to dance. And for those 3 minutes, I see her come back. I see the woman who raised me. I see them as they were on their wedding day. Ellen, I don't know how much time they have left. I don't know how many more dances they'll get. But I know my dad would give anything to dance with her one more time in front of people who understand that love doesn't end when memory does. Can you help us?" Mike printed the email and walked directly to Ellen's dressing room. She was between segments, touching up her makeup, preparing for another round of games and giveaways. He handed her the letter without saying a word. Ellen read it once, then again. When she looked up, her eyes were already wet. "Get them here," she said simply. "Next week. I don't care what we have to move. Get them here." But what Ellen didn't know yet, what nobody knew, was that this wouldn't just be a sweet segment about an elderly couple. This would become the moment that reminded millions of people what it means to truly love someone, even when they're slipping away. Richard Miller had been a high school history teacher for 40 years. Dorothy had been a nurse. They met at a community dance in 1976, and Richard always joked that he stepped on her feet so many times. That first night, she had no choice but to agree to a second date just to teach him how to dance properly. Their wedding song was "Unchained Melody" by the Righteous Brothers. It played at their reception in a small church basement in Ohio. It played when their daughter Jennifer was born. It played at Jennifer's own wedding. And now, it played every single day in their small living room, as Richard held his wife and pretended that everything was okay. But everything wasn't okay. Dorothy's diagnosis had come suddenly, brutally. One day she was fine, helping with the grandkids, planning their 50th anniversary trip. The next, she was forgetting where she put her keys, then forgetting why she walked into a room, then forgetting faces, names, years of memories dissolving like sugar in water. Richard had retired early to take care of her. He bathed her when she couldn't remember how. He reminded her to eat when she forgot she was hungry. He labeled every drawer, every door, every family photo with names and dates, desperately trying to hold on to what was slipping away. And every evening at 6 p.m., he put on their song and asked her to dance. Some days she remembered why. She'd rest her head on his shoulder and whisper, "This is our song, isn't it?" Other days she'd look at him like a stranger and ask, "Do I know you?" But she always said yes to the dance. Always. The call from Ellen's show came on a Tuesday. Jennifer answered, and when the producer explained that Ellen wanted to fly her parents to Los Angeles, wanted to give them one special moment, Jennifer broke down crying right there in her kitchen. "Mom won't understand," she said through tears. "She won't know where she is or why." "That's okay," the producer replied gently. "Your dad will know, and sometimes that's enough." 3 days later, Richard and Dorothy Miller walked onto the Ellen DeGeneres show stage. The audience had been told this was a special segment, that they needed to be respectful, that what they were about to witness wasn't entertainment. It was something deeper. Ellen came out to her usual music and applause, but there was something different in her energy. She wasn't bouncing. She wasn't dancing. She walked to center stage and waited for the noise to die down. "Today we're going to do something different," Ellen said, her voice softer than usual. "I want you to meet two people who are teaching me what love really means." Richard and Dorothy walked out slowly, hand in hand. Dorothy looked confused, overwhelmed by the lights and the audience. She kept looking at Richard with questions in her eyes. He kept squeezing her hand, whispering, "It's okay, Dot. I'm right here." Ellen greeted them warmly, gently, like you would greet someone fragile. She helped Dorothy to a chair, made sure she was comfortable, then knelt down beside Richard. "Richard, thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy." Richard smiled, that tired smile of someone who has been strong for too long. "My daughter said you wanted to meet us. I wasn't sure why. But Dorothy likes new places. Or at least she used to." Ellen looked at Dorothy, who was studying her hands, turning her wedding ring around and around on her finger. A gesture Richard said she did whenever she was trying to remember something. "Dorothy, do you know where you are?" Ellen asked gently. Dorothy looked up, looked around the studio, at the cameras, at the audience, then back at Ellen. "I'm not sure," she said honestly. "But this man here," she pointed to Richard, "he makes me feel safe. Do you know him?" The audience didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ellen chose crying. "Yes," Ellen said, her voice breaking slightly. "That's your husband. That's Richard, and he loves you very much." Dorothy smiled then, a beautiful, genuine smile. "That's nice," she said. "He seems like a good man." Richard reached over and took her hand. "The best man you ever knew," he said, and there was no bitterness in his voice, no pain, just love. Ellen stood up and addressed the camera directly. "Richard and Dorothy have been married for 47 years. Every single day, Richard puts on their wedding song and asks Dorothy to dance. And I asked them here today because I wanted to give them something." She gestured to the stage crew. The lights dimmed. A spotlight appeared in the center of the stage. And then, slowly, beautifully, the opening notes of Unchained Melody filled the studio. Richard's eyes widened. He looked at Ellen, then at the stage, then at Dorothy. "May I have this dance?" he asked his wife, just like he had every day for the past year, just like he had 47 years ago at a church basement in Ohio. Dorothy looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment, just a flicker, there was recognition. "I'd love to," she whispered. Richard helped her stand. He guided her to the center of the stage under the spotlight, in front of 300 strangers and millions of viewers, and he held her like she was the most precious thing in the world, because she was. They swayed slowly, carefully. Richard hummed the melody softly in her ear. Dorothy rested her head on his shoulder, and for those 3 minutes and 54 seconds, nothing else existed. Not the cameras, not the audience, not the disease stealing her away piece by piece. Just them. Just this dance. Just this moment. Ellen stood to the side, one hand over her mouth, tears running freely down her face. The audience was silent except for the sound of sniffling, of people reaching for tissues, of strangers holding hands because witnessing this kind of love demanded it. When the song ended, Richard kissed Dorothy's forehead. She looked up at him and said, "That was lovely. Do I know you?" And Richard, this man who had lost his wife 1,000 times but chose to fall in love with her again every single day, simply smiled and said, "I'm your husband, and I love you more than anything in this world." The audience erupted, not in applause, in tears. People stood, but not to clap, to honor, to witness, to acknowledge that they had just seen what forever actually looks like. Ellen walked over to Richard and Dorothy, and without a word, she wrapped her arms around both of them. She held them while she cried, while the audience cried, while the cameramen wiped their eyes and the producers in the booth struggled to see their monitors through the blur. When Ellen finally composed herself enough to speak, she looked directly into the camera. "This is love," she said, her voice raw. "Not the easy kind, not the kind in movies. This is the kind that stays when everything else leaves. This is the kind that dances even when the music has stopped for one of you." She turned to Richard. "What you're doing, what you do every single day, that's not obligation. That's not duty. That's pure love. And I want you to know that you're not alone." Ellen pulled an envelope from her pocket. "Richard, your daughter told us you had to retire early to take care of Dorothy. That money's been tight, that you've been trying to afford better care but can't quite make it work." Richard's face crumbled. He hadn't known Jennifer had shared that part. "So here's what we're going to do," Ellen continued. "I've partnered with the Alzheimer's Association. We're covering all of Dorothy's medical expenses. All of them. For as long as she needs care." Richard's knees buckled. Ellen caught him. "And," she continued, "we're setting up a fund in your name. The Richard and Dorothy Miller Foundation. It's going to help other families going through what you're going through. Because nobody should have to choose between love and financial survival." The audience exploded again, but Ellen wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," she said. She gestured backstage, and 3 people walked out. Richard's face transformed. "My students," he whispered. 3 former students, now adults, now successful because of a history teacher who believed in them, had flown in to say thank you. To say, "You taught us about history, but you're teaching us about love." Dorothy, confused but feeling the emotion, started crying too. She didn't understand why, but she understood that something important was happening. That episode aired 2 weeks later. It became the most watched Ellen episode in 5 years. Ellen's dance trended worldwide. The Alzheimer's Association received over $3 million in donations in the first 48 hours, and Richard and Dorothy's story became a symbol of what it means to love someone through the hardest thing imaginable. But the real story, the one that matters most, happened after the cameras stopped. Richard and Dorothy stayed in Los Angeles for 3 more days as Ellen's guests. Every evening at 6 p.m., Ellen or a producer would put on Unchained Melody, and Richard would dance with Dorothy in the hotel lobby, in the hallway, once even in an elevator. And every time, Dorothy would forget why they were dancing. But she never forgot to say yes. 6 months after the episode aired, Jennifer called Ellen's office with an update. Dorothy had declined significantly. She no longer recognized anyone, not even Richard most days. But he still danced with her, every single day at 6 p.m. He says it's not for her anymore, Jennifer told Ellen's producer through tears. He says it's for him, because those 3 minutes are when he gets to hold the woman he married, even if she doesn't remember being her. Ellen sent flowers, a note, and a framed photo from that day on stage. A picture of Richard and Dorothy dancing under the spotlight, Dorothy's head on his shoulder. Richard's eyes closed, both of them suspended in a moment where love was stronger than loss. Dorothy Miller passed away 8 months after appearing on Ellen's show. She died peacefully at home in Richard's arms, while Unchained Melody played softly in the background. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know who Richard was. But her last words, whispered so quietly that Richard almost missed them, were, "This is a beautiful song." At her funeral, Ellen sent an enormous arrangement of white roses and a card that read, "She taught us that love